Hey there, Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement and bringing you another edition of Autism Fitness Tuesday training. I know there are distractions in the background every so often, so I'll just point them out. That is an Autism Fitness Certified Pro certificate that was supposed to go to Croatia and got mailed back to me because the address was incorrect. And those are some pillows over there. It's up on the other side. There are pillows, and that's a scratch from an open mat at jiu-jitsu this past weekend. So all of these things taken care of. We can focus, and focus we shall, on today's topic, which is going to be the three, we love our threes, the three essential aspects of exercise performance that are going to make a gigantic difference in your fitness and adapted PE programs for the autism and neurodivergent population. Now, a few caveats here, as there are always caveats, as there are always certain things that we need to take into account. Number one is that when we're talking about autism and neurodiversity, it is a broad range of skills and abilities and characteristics. So we want to take that into account. And when we're talking about the autism population, it is a big range of different capabilities. So definitely something to keep in mind. The second thing to keep in mind is that with these three different areas of skill, or these things to focus on, is these are not different at all in any way, shape, or form. Form being kind of a pun here, but a pun for later. In any way, shape, or form than the neurotypical population. So these are aspects of physical performance that are generalizable to any human being. That's an important point. Third thing here is that it depends on the type of programs that you're running. So let's say, for example, you are running a sport-specific program, then not all of these are going to apply. These are more structures, or these are more guidelines for general fitness and exercise performance. And if you are running a program that is entirely game-based or sport-based or activity-based, so you're constantly doing relay races or you're constantly doing games, then also these are not going to apply. But where they are going to apply, quite importantly, if you are running strength and fitness programs for the autism and neurodivergent population, these are things that you need to apply in order for the exercise to have that golden halo around it, the training effect. The training effect is where the exercise does the thing that it is supposed to do. So it increases strength, increases stability, gets our athlete moving better, and of course generalizes to activities of daily living, life skills. All right, we see it show up in different environments, in different situations. That's the whole reason, or one of the main reasons, why we're doing what we do. So if you are running programs, or if you're planning to run programs, these are three assets and three important areas of physical performance that your athletes are going to need, regardless of whether you're running one-to-one programs or group programs. And these have particular importance when we're talking about our strengthening exercises, right? So number one is going to be range of motion, which for many individuals on the autism spectrum is going to be difficult because of the challenges for kinesthetic awareness. And we talk about this in the Autism Fitness Pro certification, where you have an athlete who's doing sandbell overhead presses, for example, and they're going really quick and it's kind of a jerky motion. So when we break this down on video and look at it, is it an overhead press? Yes, in name, but the athlete is not getting that full range of motion all the way up overhead, extending through the elbow, and then slowing down on that eccentric, that lowering phase of the movement. Now, regardless of whether we're talking about an individual on the autism spectrum, we're talking about someone who is neurotypical, you're going to get the most out of that press or out of that band row or out of that squat if you go through the full healthy range of motion. And some of the competing variables, and this is why we use the PAC profile, but some of the competing variables here are always going to be the athlete's strength and their ability to focus on that exercise, the aforementioned kinesthetic awareness, which also gets into that mind-muscle connection, which can prove challenging for many of our autism life skill athletes. That's one of the reasons why we have to dial into the exact parameters of coaching that we're going to need for each individual. Really important. So that range of motion means that they're moving through the full movement in a healthy lengthening and then a healthy contraction of those muscles. So just kind of pressing the sandbells halfway up is not going to have the same strengthening effect as pressing them all the way up overhead and controlling the movement on the way down. Again, this is for any population, but one that is particularly important for the autism population because we see deviations from this a lot. Now, at this point, and we're just one in, you might be saying, yes, there are also these other competing behavioral and cognitive challenges that can get in the way. Absolutely. And not discounting those at all. That's why we, in autism fitness programming, we utilize the PAC profile, physical, adaptive, and cognitive. In this video, we're particularly focused on the physical, but it still lends itself towards a great amount of importance when you are programming for your athletes. You might have some athletes who are so averse to exercise at first that the form and the technique is not really going to be there, and that's okay. You have a baseline, you have a starting point, but once you can start to implement much more robust programming, these are the things that are going to make the difference between the exercise just being done and the exercise really being meaningful for that athlete. Now, unfortunately, in both the neurotypical population with training and oftentimes in the neurodivergent population for training, we see a lot of, I see a lot of, why are we doing this exercises? So to understand what the purpose is of the exercise, what the function is, what it's supposed to look like technique-wise, and not be arbitrary in your approach to exercises and just say, well, anything will do. Let's just throw in a hula hoop, and then let's throw in a volleyball, and then let's just do sprints back and forth from cone to cone. What is the purpose of this exercise? And if you can't answer that, you got a problem, right? Everybody has a problem. So this gets back to the validity of using certain strength training exercises and using them in the right ways with our autism and neurodivergent athlete. Okay, off the soapbox for aspect or skill number 2, or element number 2. So the first one is range of motion. The second one is going to be eccentric control, controlling the movement on the way down or on the way back. And we see this a lot with squats, again, presses, band rows, any movement where the athlete has to lengthen and then contract. All right. Again, it's a big deal because an exercise, strength-based exercise, is going to have the most benefit for any individual when there is a controlled eccentric motion for as many repetitions as are in that set. This is where we see that kind of fast, jerky motion again, and we need to take the steps to set the athlete up for success with that particular movement. What do I mean by that? Well, with a squat, for example, we can have the athlete squat to a lower box, which does limit the range of motion, but we can also have them hold on to a resistance band so that they can control their way down when their hips touch that box and then come back up. When you have that controlled eccentric, you're going to get a greater muscular contraction. When you get a greater muscular contraction, then you are going to have a more effective exercise. Now, I know this is getting, for many people, micro, and you're like, why does this matter in exercise for the autism and neurodivergent population? These are the things that matter in exercise for any population. So just starting out, and a lot of what's out there is, oh, well, let's just start with a walk. Let's just start with a bike ride. Let's just start with, I don't know, hopscotch or this game or that. Fine, you can start where you start, but if you want something to actually have a meaningful impact on someone's life, then we have to talk about strength training, and this is how to strength train. So we still want to take best practices in strength and fitness and apply them to this population. Doesn't mean that you're going to get perfect performance in the first session. It's seldom that I've had that with many of my one-to-one athletes or small group athletes. That's fine, but this is what we're striving for. So the first was range of motion. The second is that eccentric control. And the third is volume. How much exercise? So when we're talking about how much, we're talking about sets and repetitions. How many of these do we need of each exercise in order to get that training effect? So typically what we know from the research and real world practice in strength and sports science is that somewhere between 2 and about 5, usually 3 to 4, but we'll say 2 to 5 working sets of an exercise in the, let's say for the sake of the population that we're working with, somewhere between 10 and 12, even 10 to 15 repetitions with that full healthy range of motion, with that controlled eccentric when we can get it, which is going to facilitate that mind-muscle connection, or what we refer to as the mind-muscle connection, is going to lead towards a hypertrophic or muscle building, not like bodybuilding, but a strengthening and lean muscle building result. And this is going to happen over time. So these are the things that we may not see it in the first session or the second session or the 12th session, but over time, compounded effect is going to lead to our athletes being stronger, more stable, definitely more resilient to accidents or to injury, being generally healthier. So we want to make sure that in each session, when you have those focus exercises, the squats, the push, the pull, the carry, we want to stay in that generally 3 to 5. I know I said 2, that's on the lower end, but generally anywhere from 2 to 5 consistent sets per session. And this is also going to benefit the adaptive and the cognitive areas of performance for our autism life skill athletes as well, because they're becoming more familiar with the exercise. They're becoming more confident and capable with the exercise. So switching things up on a regular basis for no reason other than variety is simply a bad idea. We want to stay consistent and squeeze all of the juice that we can out of that one exercise for that athlete, because if they're just squatting to a box and they've got about 6 or 8 inches range of motion, we have not even gotten liftoff as far as what that exercise can do to benefit their lower body strength and their stability. We're still working on that. And that, again, is fine. It's not bad, but there's no reason to abandon that exercise just yet. So for our athletes who are just starting to emerge in this world of strength and fitness, we really want to stay consistent with those exercises until they can perform each one of those movements independently, starting to add some weight on the squats and the presses and the band rows. And even then, we want to be cautious about how varied we get with different exercises, because because it's different doesn't necessarily make it better. So staying in that range of 2 on the lowest, up to 5 sets per session is going to start producing that training effect. So if you're doing one set of everything and it's 20 different exercises, it's probably not going to have much of an effect. You're moving around a lot, but certainly not developing this skill. So we want to stay with that, maybe 3 to 5 set range, which is a good way of structuring your session too. It's going to take X amount of time to do these amount of sets and these amount of repetitions. So how many exercises can I fill in to this 45-minute or 55-minute session here? So that's when you start playing programming Tetris and building in what you need to do and how much time you have to do it. So your 3 important aspects of any exercise, again, we're talking about mainly strengthening exercises, are going to be the range of motion, that eccentric control, and the volume, the sets and reps. So that's programming math there. Again, these are things that have been tested and validated in the neurotypical populations. We're just taking these best practices and applying them to the autism and neurodivergent population, because we're not talking about completely different bodies. We are oftentimes talking about some challenges as far as kinesthetic awareness and focus and the ability to follow cues in other directions, which is why we need to have best practices, not just from the exercise perspective, but from the coaching and behavior support perspective as well. And that, my friends, is exactly why we have the Autism Fitness Pro certification. You can learn more about that in the link below. And I hope these things have been helpful as far as guiding you in how to implement exercise and what to be looking for as well. So if this has been helpful, definitely please subscribe. And if you think someone else might get something out of these videos, please share. I am Autism Fitness founder Eric Chessen, leading the movement for movement. And I will see you another time, probably next week, for Autism Fitness Tuesday training. Thank you for watching.